Welcome to Moving Iron with Casey Seymour and Greg Peterson, the podcast for anyone and everyone involved and interested in the business of ag equipment. If you want to understand what trends and market forces are impacting the price of your iron, you've come to the right place. Buckle up, it's time to move some iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Welcome back, Greg Peterson with the Senior. Pete, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm doing well, Casey. How are you today?
Doing good, man. Doing real good. I think I like to say that I'm the only person in the country that's cold right now, but I'm pretty sure that's not the truth because it's cold and snowy about anywhere in the United States right now. It feels like.
Yeah, we got school canceled up here in Minnesota for cold. Of course, us old guys, we remember we had to walk uphill both ways when it was 10, 15 below. But no, these days, yeah, they just they called school off. So it's I think 35 below wind chill last night. So it's a little nippy.
And when you're walking uphill both ways, that was from like September 1st all the way through the end of May, right?
Oh, totally.
It's always 15 below, right?
Into the wind. Wind would be from the north in the morning and flip around in the afternoon. It's my memory, I'm sure I'm not misremembering.
It's 100% accurate, I'm sure. 100%. I tell my kids those same stories. So yeah, also, my kids are out of school today too. They didn't have and strictly not because of any kind of a snow situation, but wind chill situations. And like you said, I don't ever remember school being closed because it was too cold. I do remember because there was too much ice or too much snow, but that would have been about it.
Right. It's it's a different age. We're different. We're different animals. We're dinosaurs, I guess, Casey.
That's right. We ate lead-based paint for fun when we were kids. Look at us, well.
And we laid across the back of the pickup or the car. No seatbelts. We were projectiles.
Pretty much, yeah. Met in the truck for 30 miles. No one cared. It was good fun.
Hey, we just rode in the back, kind of hanging off out of the bed. It kind of gives me the willies thinking about it. But I guess we're fortunate we survived.
I got a few miles on the tailgate. I can tell you that. So things are a lot different than they were back then, for sure. For sure. So, well, I think today is a great time to talk about what's going on in the sprayer marketplace. If you take a look at where we're at, we're in that heading into that top dress season for wheat, and we'll be top dressing corn, those kind of things too, as we move into that time of the year. I know it's cold and snowy right now, but here it is, mid-February, and a lot of planters will be rolling here in about 30 days, 45 days, something like that. And they'll be rolling all the way through the end of May. And as the wheat comes out of dormancy, we're going to start seeing things moving there. I used to sell a lot of used sprayers about this time of the year, 1st of January through the end of February, first part of March. And as you looked at how things are shaping up, I always had this theory that I would follow where when the sprayer market was hot, the 4-wheel drive market was cold. And when the 4-wheel drive market was hot, the sprayer market was cold. And I kind of attributed a lot of that to no-till operations, what that looked like, because about every 3 to 5 years, you'd see this big swing in the marketplace.
Yep.
I guess, Pete, as you're looking at what's going on right now in the marketplace, looking at the auction and stuff like that, I can't really say that this is any kind of anything going on right now that's pointing like, hey, sprayers are on fire. They're not, because everything's run through the auction right now, and you're looking at a lot of stuff on the market. But if you look at supply and demand curve, which I know that you have a lot of that information out there, that there's two animals out there right now that show a lot of supply building up, and that's row crop tractors and sprayers. So I guess as you're looking at the market right now, what do you see happening, and what do you see coming through the marketplace right now?
I think pricing wise, it sort of mimics what we see with high horsepower tractors. Casey, late model used high horse tractors. We see the same with late model used sprayers. There's been some pressure there the past year, not surprisingly. But that said, I mean, if I'm honest, I think the auction pricing that I'm seeing on sprayers, actually the past year or so here, has been a little stronger than I would have thought it would have been, given the volume we've seen at auction. So I measure that in a couple ways. Of course, we also track dealer advertised pricing as it correlates to the average auction price. So what we're seeing pretty consistently on a lot of late model planters is kind of my machine repeat ratio. The average auction price divided by the average dealer ad price is kind of running about 75%, which historically, is pretty solid. It's almost, I always say 71 to 76% is sort of my window of normalcy over the 26 years I've been tracking that. Now that said, similar to the tractor market, If you drift out a little older, 10 plus years old, we see a little bit stronger buyer demand when good condition used sprayers show up. And then, like you say, I mean, the patterns, the seasonal patterns are interesting to track. Supply and demand, I was just looking at that before we hopped on the call here. So it's like the back end of our machinerypete.com website. We track, search traffic by category. And if you look at self-propelled sprayers, we saw, I would say, maybe a little bit bigger build up year end in 2023 versus 24, kind of late October through December, a little bigger a year ago. And then, of course, this time of year, like you say, a good time to be selling. So we see that search traffic kind of slowly rise here as we get into that March time frame you're talking about.
Yeah. So one thing I've been paying close attention to as I've been watching this stuff move through is that I've kind of had this, I'm betting on a lot of things here, Machinery Pete, because there's a lot of things I bet on and a lot of things I lose on. So that's why you don't ever want to gamble with Casey, because typically I lose. But when I'm looking at the market right now, there weren't that much stuff that got the orders that got placed in 2024 for 2025 delivery are obviously off, right? You can go read any publication out there and they're going to read 25 to 30% off. That's just kind of what you're seeing. What I've been tracking is the amount of equipment that got delivered in that first, January, and then I'll check it again back in March, if we get to that first quarter. But as we start looking at the tail end of March going into April, I'm going to start kind of tracking and see what's happening. And it feels like supply is starting to dwindle a little bit, or it's at least flatten out anyway. I almost say it's dwindling, it's flattening out. As you're looking at the marketplace, are you feeling something similar where you're seeing some of the sprayer marketplace? To me, it just feels like it's not growing on the same path it's been growing on. You're starting to see a kind of a little bit of a rounding in the curve there, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, once again, my friend, you were right on it. That's exactly what I see when I look at the supply side of things. And again, comparing it to the high horse tractor market, I see a tighter pattern between supply and demand lines versus the high horse tractor market. So it's a little bit more in balance, like you'd say. And I think that's reflective of the gap we're seeing between the auction price and dealer ad price, kind of a decent number, maybe a little higher auction pricing than I would have thought. So yeah, I think that's a bit, shows a sign of health, you could say. Now, like you said before, it's not like anything's on fire. One correlation we ran into recently, I thought it was a pretty good example, Casey. We were filming an auction about a week before Christmas, so mid-December. It was in South Central Illinois. It was a farm auction by Schmid Auction, Trent Schmid, great team there. Very, very cold day. And it was an in-person auction, so it was fun to film for our TV show. But they had almost like new, a 22 Hagee STS-12, only had 182 hours on it, like 1,200 gallon, 120 foot boom, sweet rig. And it sold for $428,000, which, I mean, that's a big check, right? 428K, pay me today, hard cash. But I looked, and on the one hand, you can say, hey, that's the second highest auction price ever on an STS-12. But the highest one was quite a bit higher, and it was earlier in 24, back in, I think the date was, I can make sure I get it right here. It was March 18th. Sullivan had it. The sale was in Hamilton off their lot, online sale. Also a 22 model STS-12. Had more hours, had 549 hours, but it brought 480,500. So that was a year ago in March. 480 was testing the top side. I think 484 is the highest we've seen. That was on a Deere 612R out of London, Ohio, about that same time, last year ago, last February. And then by, again, December, that STS-12 with a third of the hours was down to 428. So that's a little bit of the pressure, hard cash pressure on the really, really late model ones that I'm seeing.
Yeah. So that example you gave, you said it was the one that sold from what had 500 more hours on it, or it was reversed?
Yeah, back in March, it was 549 hours, brought $480,500. And then again, I stood there in the cold wind and watched that 22 model with 182 hours go for 428. Now, right down the line, about three pieces down the line, was a 14 model. If we talk again, this 10-year-old mark. So there was a 2014 Challenger MT865C. The farmer had painted it jet black. It was just beautiful. He loved John Deere tractors and a black Caterpillar. But again, this is Challenger. That thing broke a record by, it sold for $341,000 and broke a record by 26.5. So I see the same thing with sprayers, that 10-year-oldish mark. So I think you and I had talked, but we filmed an auction. It was February 1st. It's in Northeast North Carolina, good black dirt area there, just south of the Virginia line. And that guy, it was a tobacco farmer retiring, had a really nice line of equipment. The hottest thing on the sale was his 2013 Deere 4730 sprayer.
Yeah.
That was super nice. It had 3,334 hours on it, but it brought 104. Which if you can, and to listeners out there, you can go to machinerypete.com, punch up all the auction prices. It's free and you can filter it. So 104, that's the third highest auction price ever on a 4730 with over 3,000 hours. It's only $1,000 off the record, 105. But you could tell it beyond just the sale price. It was the chatter at the auction. You could tell we were there the day before. That's what everybody was talking about was the sprayer.
Right.
And so again, that 10-year-old stuff, when people ask me right now, hey, Machinery Pete, how's the used market? I say, well, we got to talk about two different animals. So it's the 1 to 3, 1 to 4-year-old stuff, which is adjusting. And then the older stuff is doing better. And you might split it a third way and you'd say the livestock's related equipment.
Yeah.
Used stuff is holding much better too.
Yeah. So two things I think happen in this marketplace when you look at where we're at right now. It's as these things kind of settle out and we kind of hit the bottom, which I think we've hit a bottom, stabilized the bottom. I use the term soft bottom a lot, where it's not completely firm, but it's not completely soft either. You're not going to fall through the floor, but you're going to get, mud up to your knees type of thing. But if you're walking through and look and see how things are working, I think three things happen right now. One is you start looking at, okay, the 1 to 3-year-old stuff starts to kind of settle in and kind of know what the new normal is going to look like. You start working our way up there as far as supply and demand goes. The second thing is you have a lot of buyers out there that are looking at, that $150,000 less stuff because they can take what they've got, trade it in, and come up with a few dollars and pretty much kind of stabilize their situation, kind of upgrade where they're at. The other thing I see happening in this situation a lot, is I see a lot of guys move from the pull type sprayer into a older, the kind of you're talking about there, like that 10-year-old something, that $100,000, between $85,000 and $125,000 sprayer, where they can find something that's going to perceive value to them, but they can get from their pull type rig to their self-propelled rig and kind of get their foot into that door and start going down that path again. Do you have any data out there that shows anything where you're seeing some movement in pull type stuff?
Well, it's interesting. I would say anecdotally on my travels here, just the past, I'd say 4 months, I've run across quite a number, I'd say 3 or 4 guys that have talked to me about, their love of their current pull type rig. So I find it interesting in different parts of the country, you run into, different things that people like, I think. No, I think you're right that can be a very common scenario, bumping up into that slightly older sprayer. I remember a couple years ago, it was funny when I was looking at the supply and demand chart from the back end of machinerypete.com. Our charts go back 2 years. So right now I could see, mid-February of 23. And on the supply side, that was the very end of the dearth of, there wasn't any, right? 21, 22 into early 23. And then the supply started to go up gradually. Not as steep a supply jump as the high horse tractors, but rising. But back then, guys were buying a second sprayer out of fear because there was no supply. If mine breaks down and I got a spray and my dealer doesn't have any excess anymore. So now, of course, that's shifted. So I think for me, it'll be interesting to see, Casey. Curious to get your thoughts. Just 2024, we saw quite a volume of dealers bringing, large late model sprayers out to auction. And then it kind of slowed up a little bit at the end of the year. Just curious your take, what we might see here. Your thoughts on 25?
I think I'm really bullish. I'm kind of all in on this last part of 2020 or last part of third quarter going into the fourth quarter, what that looks like. And it's, if you watch the market today, the front month corn closed at 502. So, obviously there's basis, stuff like that. We're not at $5 cash yet, which is a whole other animal when you get there. But it feels like everything is kind of pointing towards, hey, we're going to see some stuff. Now, the March painted expectations report is going to come out, and everyone's going to plant corn. There's going to be a record number of corn acres being planted up, so it's going to mess with the market a little bit. but there's a lot of time left where there could be some serious issues as far as going into planting season, what that might look like, as well as what it might look like with some possible drought situations you hear a lot of people talk about this year. So I guess the way I'm looking at it is there could be a lot of money come into the marketplace. And when I say a lot of money, that's a relative term compared to what we've seen over the last couple of years. But if you're watching where that money flow comes in, the only thing that's going to be out there to buy right now, it's that late model, low hour stuff. If you're looking for something that's near new, and then obviously everybody else can update as they roll through that. And I think we're going to see a great opportunity to see a run on used equipment here in the last quarter of the year going into 2026. And I'm not even that, to be honest with you, I don't think that the order writing periods for new equipment in 2025 are going to be that overwhelming from the manufacturer's perspective, just because of where guys are still at. So you might have 2025 and 20. It might look a lot like, if you go back and think about it, Greg, look a lot like what we saw happen in 2008 going to 2009 when we saw that 2009-2012 run, where the supply of new equipment coming to the factory is really, really low. And there's a lot of money that hit all of a sudden in that time frame. And it took off and ran. And it wasn't until 2010, 2011, we really saw the new stuff hit the ground again. And I'm kind of feeling like 26, 27 is when we start seeing the build back up of new cells coming out of 2026 order prime and delivered in 2027. And that's kind of my theory that I'm going to stick to for a while until somebody proves it.
Well, it's that, I think I would concur, Casey. I've been, when I write about it, I talk about it kind of a condensed boom bust cycle. Yeah. So this period of 2024, not a lot of new was sold. There was quite a bit of a back off there. We understand why. I just saw the AEM numbers for January of 25 here, and again, a little tightening there. So it's interesting on the new side. You get this a little bit of a back off as dealers focus on moving the used and kind of right sizing that. But I'm sensing as I travel around, farmers are beginning to look around the curve in the bend and go, okay, well, like you say, you might be running into, it sounds weird to say it, but a situation where there's tighter supply, whether that's a year from now, year and a half, 2 years, whatever. So I think when you're looking to buy, or you're trying to analyze that, I think you really need to pay attention to what the market is doing. And right now, I think balance sheets are still, fairly strong out there. And again, the data shouts at me again on this nice older stuff. So another example, if you talk a Miller Nitro, this was I think it was December 30th, a farm auction, Mendon, Michigan. We saw, again, it was a 2014 model, so right at 10 years old. But it was a Miller Nitro 5240, super nice one, had 825 hours on it. 1,200 gallon, 120 foot booms, went for $270 hard cash. That was sold by Schrader Real Estate and Auction.
Wow.
And that was about 14 and a half over the highest I'd ever seen on the Miller Nitro. So, but a low hour 10-year-old one, that's what everybody wants. When doesn't matter what color it is, you put it up for sale and it's just like Katie bar the door. So situationally 25, if you're looking to, maybe upgrade your sprayer, I think it's a pretty good time to be looking for that maybe 3, 4, 5-year-old one out there, whether it's auction or call your dealer right off the lot, probably some good pricing, and try to get ahead of it before, like you're saying, it flips and, everyone wants a new one. Everyone wants to update. If you're buying in that environment, we saw what that was like in 21 to early 23. And the numbers come unhinged when you're buying, when everyone's buying. When any market's about availability, pricing's out the window.
For sure, 100%. All right, Greg, probably a good place to stop. Plenty of things to think about there. And I like you brought up the Miller Nitro thing, and that's watch a lot of that kind of stuff start to filter their way through these times of years like this. So a lot of moving parts there. Greg, appreciate you being on. We'll catch you next time. Go to machinerypete.com. You want to find Greg, and you can you got all kinds of stuff going on. You can head Greg to come talk at your local convention or whatever, and do those kind of things. So Greg, appreciate you being on, and we'll look forward to talking to you next week.
Sounds great, Casey.
All right, so stay tuned. Coming up next, we got Rich Pass to talk about what's happening in the overall economy and talk about the strength of the dollar and how that's going to affect trade, what could be happening. All right, welcome back to Moving Iron Podcast. I got Rich Boston come back on with AG Financial, and he is cool enough to come on and talk about what's happening in the economy. Rich, how you doing today, bud?
Good, thank you.
You're up there in New York, so you probably got all kinds of nice warm weather up there this time of year, don't you?
40 or 50 mile an hour gust here in the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Snow hasn't been as bad as when I was a kid. Yeah, in recent years, you couldn't snowmobile the way you used to, but it's getting there now. People are having some fun with it.
That's good. That's good. You got to have the snowmobile out. That's for sure. Well, Rich, there's a ton of stuff going on, man. I want to get your opinion on some stuff. If you take a look at where the market's at, we get $5 corn today, and it's been a long time since we've seen $5 on the front month corn out there. I believe if you close up about 502 and some change, if I remember right. But where we're seeing things settle in at, a lot of moving parts right now. Really early in the year, a lot of stuff. You hear everything from super drought this summer to cold planting conditions and what that looks like. So a lot of bullishness, I guess, if you look at where the market's going to be at. But we're also going to see a planting expectations report that says, hey, you know what, we're going to probably plant the most corn we've ever seen planted in the United States and where we're at. But I guess as you're looking at grains right now, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so the model's done very well for late last year into this year. Market started up kind of slower than what I wanted, but it's worked out for us. Now it's speeding higher. It is getting short-term overbought if you're in charts and technical stuff. Fundamentals are still there, rather supportive, but they're well known. And the dollar has been relative, which we'll talk about a little later. But I think how I'm playing this the next couple of weeks is I want to be looking for maybe a setback by March, maybe February into March. And it is one of the more important types of sell signals per year. But I can't help it. The model's leaving the door open that it can be higher still by summer. And I will say the best bull markets we've ever had in the grains from 1865, 66, when we have the USDA data starting, what I've noticed is if you have strong prices from fall harvest into the next year's growing season, and then you get a crop problem, that's your larger, better bull market. And if you looked at it last year, of course, it was down first half of the year. And I said, even if we get a crop problem, it's not going up all that much, and it may not go up at all. Well, that's how it went. This year, it's trending higher. It's working. So all it tells us is there's even more upside if we get that crop problem, that the market is got a good demand situation going for it. So, yeah, I'm going to be looking to take a little profit here in the next few weeks maybe, but I don't necessarily see a reason that we have to be concerned it's going down a huge amount and staying down. I think you'll see another swing higher. And I'm even optimistic in soybeans. You can make a case, say the world's got all the beans it's want. China doesn't want our beans because of the trade war. I'm going to make a case all three, wheat, corn, and beans, can be higher in summer. As always, you got to take them one step at a time. Sometimes you can't just sit on it for 6 months and see what you get. You got to manage it, but I don't work going.
Yep. So the question I have for you now is, you talked about it a second ago, China and the trade war. So one day we're having a trade war, the next day we're not. And then I think we're kind of edging towards the fact that we have a trade war now. But it could, tomorrow we could wake up and it could be over too. So I guess as you're looking at the situation here, let's say we have a crop problem and we don't have a good relationship with China when it comes to trade, or we have a crop problem and we have a good possibility with trade with China. As you look at this, my thing with the China trade thing when it comes to beans is that there's going to be so many beans in South America that it doesn't. We can strike whatever deal we want, but China doesn't have to come to the United States anytime soon. So I guess as you're looking at this, to me, the China thing is just out, and I don't know that you can factor it out no matter how you want to cut and paste that scenario. But I guess as you look at this right now, what's your feel right now for trade, and where do you think we're settling it at?
Yeah, I did some work over the weekend just for the economy side of things, and I did China, Japan, Eurozone, and England. And what I noticed is all those countries or regions of countries, it looks like their deflation can pick up this year into next, but I'm not picking up signs it's going to explode and be something terribly, cause an economic collapse or anything like that. Their GDP looks like it's on track to pick up in the next year. So that can make some improvements there. But at the same time, at least for China, I think what I'm saying is I see better improvements in England, Eurozone. Japan's already there doing some of the better things they've had in decades. So I don't want to get overly optimistic on China. I think they got a lot of work yet to go. There's things can blow up on them yet on that real estate side. Their people are still not necessarily that happy, but they're doing better. I must say in the last 6 months with this TikTok thing and people started going over to that red note, some of the things that were coming out of China, and I agree with young people how they're mad that this country's got a lot of propaganda and we're not seeing what's really going on over there. It's amazing to me, some of the technology and advancements. I've bought some stuff out of China here recently, equipment stuff, and the manufacturing has like improved overnight, the customer service. They're going to get things around eventually. But with this trade war, with the idea that I don't think their economy is just going to explode where they're going to eat so much that they have to go to the U.S. and buy because they can't get enough from Brazil, I don't see that. Okay. So to me, I look on the corn side, wheat side. I don't think China it's rather neutral. Okay. My model doesn't particularly care. On the soybean side, it likes China. Okay. In the sense of, it doesn't have to buy from us because Brazil and Argentina are doing well enough, So I like China in the sense of a negative factor to hold us back on soybeans, but it doesn't find a problem with China holding us back in wheat and corn. It might even help corn. There's some interesting things going on there for weather here in the next few years. I think they could finally get a bit of a crop problem there as well. That could ignite things. So, I'm feeling a bit more warmed up on China economy-wise, but probably more so over in Europe and England right now. So I don't see a collapse. I know some people are always trying to forecast China collapsing. I think it's it's coming. I think it's a couple of years away at least,
Mm-hmm.
And it may wait till the end of the decade when the whole world's probably going to have a recession. And so I'm going to go a bit optimism there with China that they're going to be okay. But then that boils down as far as our exports, the trade war. And you can just see that's breaking into three groups. Some Chinese businessmen are going to say, well, if we have to, we'll cut our price to try to offset some of that tariff and see if we can keep the business. And I'm wondering if they did that a lot, what does that mean on Trump's end of how it's, hey, things ain't working the way we thought. But there's other business people saying they're going to they're just going to go ahead and assume they're going to sell less to the U.S., but they're going to work even harder of where else do they sell it in the world. So that's going to create competition for us in other parts of the world. And then there's still others that they think that they'll just have to swallow it, that they're going to lose. That's all there is to it. And so now, which I can't tell the percentages of this to kind of give the bias to this, because there's no question about it, if this tariff stuff really blows up, that might be one of the catalysts to finally break China's economy down further. And then we're going to get a contagion and worries like that, and it'll spread around the world. So, but for the moment, a little bit optimistic. In the next 6 months, I don't see a problem with China, and they're still going to be importing grain from somebody. And
for sure.
For
sure. So speaking of exporting grain, you can't export the grain in the United States very well, and the dollar is as high as it is. So if you're taking a look at what's going on, but that has slowed exports. So it kind of shows you where the supply in the world is. It's very thin supply. Everyone's kind of right where they need to be at. So the dollar hasn't hurt exports like the way I thought it would.
Yeah. Well, my mother like 10 years ago said, got to get off this idea. It's a dollar, that it might not be as important as we think. Well, then probably 5-7 years ago, I was doing some heavy duty work with some commercial companies of how to really analyze it. While doing it, I was watching their traders or cash traders for exports, imports. I noticed they hardly ever talked about the dollar. And the reason was they get business in the dollar. They really weren't thinking in terms of local currencies. So I soon learned that it's not quite as important as we think, and the model's been right on that. Really, over the past 5 years, my model is saying dollars is quite important on the wheat side just for excitement. It doesn't necessarily impact the exports because there's only so much we can sell to compete by, but it will excite the prices. It will bounce things around, and it will do that more than the corn and soybeans. So they've been rather sheltered, insulated over the past 5 years than, say, 20 years ago. The dollar was more important 20 years ago. for corn and soybeans. And I think it has something to do with the globalization. And even though we're trying to wreck the globalization, it doesn't appear to be changing that dollar impact. So, yeah, and right at the moment, my model's not too concerned for corn and soybean prices in terms of the dollar. And it's now because of Russia, the market just dragged its feet, especially in the U.S., for so long of ignoring Russia's winter wheat and whatnot, and really ignoring Europe prices. They were then watching Russia, and suddenly, bam, the dollar's up. And what was going on is really they were worried about the dollar more than they were worried about what's going on with the global supply.
Yep.
And now they're saying, they're focused more on how's Russia going to impact the rest of these countries around the world in this global supply, and they've kind of forgot the dollar. So we've got a very nice spike in wheat going here. But you got to watch out for wheat. Someday it'll probably return to say, okay, where are we with the dollar? Right. Now, my dollar forecast, my thoughts are, I thought I had a bottom here about a week or two ago, and it snapped up, it snapped back down. Model saying, don't give up. It's very, very close to a bottom. I think the dollar can work higher into summer, but right at the moment, my grain modeling is saying, don't worry about that. Worry more about weather and the tariffs and stuff like that. Other than, like I say, wheat could get a little more sensitive at times again over the dollar. How well the dollar rallies in the summer, I'm not so sure on. If it only goes up somewhat, I think these grains are pretty much dialed in. They can cope with it. If it goes up a large amount, then we may have to have a discussion that's going to help hurt some demand here and cap things. And, of course, if we ever got a soaring dollar at the same time of some inflation, but also of a crop problem, what will happen is you'll get the prices so high, you're going to ration demand big time.
Right.
Flip the other way.
What's that old saying? Here's for high prices and high prices.
Yeah. That's right. It works very well in commodities.
It does. All right, Rich, appreciate you coming on. If folks want to reach out to you, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, you can email me at rich@ag-financial.com. On Threads, I'm at rich_Pawson, and you can also ping me there on Twitter on X.
Right on. That's rich_Pawson as well, too. So, cool, man. Rich, I appreciate you being on the podcast, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, let me put up the go to criticalpoint.podbean.com. I'm redoing the websites, and while doing it, I'm putting up everything for free. Combining two websites, coming up with new subscriptions. So in the meantime, all the videos, audio are for free.
Forgot about that. Talk about your podcast real quick. I forgot about that, Rich. I'm sorry.
Yep. So that address is criticalpoint.podbean.com. Now, what I do is I have a serve videos that go out every day, and I try to keep them short as possible. They're morning briefs, but on Thursday, I put out one that's a little on the long side. You can get up 30 or 40 minutes at times. And the weekly update in the grains is going to talk about everything, the weather, and where's the drought monitor map, and economy, and this and that. Whereas the morning briefs will be a little more of, hey, prices are going up, 10 cents in corn, and they're coming down 5, things like that. And then I have it for the stock market, the economy, bonds, interest rates, gold, and crude oil. But my greatest emphasis and focus is more on economy, stock market, and the grains. And the type of model forecasting I do, I come up with even, believe it or not, once a decade buy-sell signals when the stock market's up 100 to 400%, down to 20 to 50%. Believe it or not, corn since year 1800 has a bull market every single decade that's gone up. Once it was up 65%, once 85%, but 90% of the time it was up 100 to 400% in corn. It worked again in the early 2020s here, up 160% by my chart, which was futures based. When you get those kind of moves, though, they normally come all the way back down. So do not forget that.
They do. They never stay there, right, Rich? Never stay there. Right on. Well, Rich, I appreciate you being on, man. We'll catch you again next time.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Coming up next, we got Matt Rath with AgriVision and Aaron Fennell to talk about what's happening in the sprayer market. Continue that conversation, and we'll be back here soon. All right, we're back here. I got Matt Rath from AgriVision back in here. Aaron Fennell will be joining us here in just a little bit, talk about what's going on in the sprayer market. Matt, how you doing, buddy?
Good. How you been, Casey?
Been good, man. It's been a minute since I've seen you. How you guys got spooky cold right now, or you guys in a warm banana belt spot of the world right now?
No, we're like my truck this morning said minus 15 on the way in, so we're but that's supposed to warm up to like 50 next week. So we don't know what we're getting every day.
Yeah, it's welcome to living in the Midwest, right?
Exactly right. Yep.
Just wait a couple of days and it's all a whole different weather.
Little change. Yep, no doubt.
So Matt, talk about what you do for AgriVision and what kind of give a little synopsis of what your background or kind of what your area looks like.
Yeah, you bet. So AgriVision equipment is in primarily western Iowa. We cover, if you look at Iowa on a map, you'll have I-35 that runs north and south, and then I-80 cuts through about the middle, east and west, and we cover the whole southwest Iowa quadrant. And then we have a pocket of stores up in northwest Iowa, up around the Sioux City area and northeast of there. So 16 stores in Iowa. I've been in this position, the used equipment manager position, since end of 2014. So seen some other highs and lows, throughout the last 10 years on a day-to-day basis. And I'm the one doing the evals and do the wholesaling for the company as well. So see a lot of equipment on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. A lot of stuff going on. So you do all the evaluations, do all the wholesale stuff, all those kind of things too. So you're wear a couple of different hats in the world, and it's between the wholesale guy and the used equipment guy. I would say tomato, right? It's also like the same. Right. It's just about pronounced a little bit different, right?
Exactly right.
So when you're looking at how all that stuff goes, talk a little bit about some of the volume you're seeing right now. Are you seeing more activity than you thought you might see, and kind of what's your thoughts?
Yeah, so December was a little slower than what we anticipated. I'd call it an average December. It wasn't anything that was crazy that got out of hand where you couldn't keep up with the salesmen sending in evaluations, which then concerned me, going into January, because typically there's a lull in there, but it actually picked up in January and was very busy, very active in January. We're starting to see a little lull right now, but I think it's more weather related than anything. And then a lot of guys travel. Seems like February is their time to get out of town before then the planting season rush comes here in a month or so. But yeah, and it's like you said, it's been cold and snow, and that usually deters the salesman from getting out and seeing too much equipment at this stage of the game. But otherwise, we've been pleasantly surprised with the activity that we've seen out in the countryside.
For sure. So I want to bend your ear a little bit today about sprayer and kind of what you see happening there, because we're in that time frame now where I remember back when I was working the dealership that this was always between January 1st and like March 1st. That was a pretty good time to sell the straggler sprayer, right? No one really like setting up their time frame like, hey, I'm ready to go buy a sprayer now, and it's just when I'm going to buy it. But it was something happened and they're ready to buy a sprayer, right? Out of the ordinary. As you look at the sprayer market right now, talk me through a little bit what you see happening there. Talk me through a little bit about what you see happening on the overarching kind of dollars and cents that you're seeing with sprayers right now.
Yeah, so as I talk to other dealers, I'd say sprayers is probably the one category that comes up the most as far as the level of concern, just with the number of units that are out there, and that inventory continues to grow. Just haven't seen that cycle turn where we've seen a downturn as far as the inventory levels. We do quite a few 1-year rolls with some large cooperatives here in Iowa, which in the past has been a very good business model for us as far as then being able to bring those back in at a very competitive dollar and transfer them to other dealers. A lot of other dealers have, looked for those to come in year in, year out. We're starting to lose that a little bit. The other thing I've been watching is I noticed the model mix. It used to be where we're pretty scattered as far as models and then size of booms and things like that. We used to never think you could run a 120-foot boom in Southwest Iowa, and now everybody has a 120-foot boom. So 412Rs specifically are something we watch just from a inventory standpoint that's kind of building up and has some pressure from a price standpoint.
Yep. Are you seeing that because is that building up because you're seeing a model flip where more guys are moving in maybe that from that 410 and maybe jump to 412 and going to 46 and up into like a 612 or something like that? Or what do you think is some of that driving factor behind that?
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. I mean, 412s are our main model that we sell from a sprayer standpoint. Don't really sell a lot of 410s. The other thing I was looking at there, just if I look at some advertising websites and then dial it down to the 412 specifically, 80% of the sprayers in that category are 23 and 24 models. So you're looking at very high price sprayers. The other thing is 75% of them are 120 foot with ExactApply. So that's where I go back to. We used to be able to differentiate ourselves a little bit by having some high optioned, maybe different boom size sprayers. And now everybody has the kind of the same model mix. So we're all kind of fighting over the same group of customers out there with the same offerings. So that's been a big sticking point.
Yep. When you're looking at some on the technology side of it too, you talk about ExactApply. ExactApply has been around forever,
Yeah.
whether you're talking about, back 2018, 2016, 2016 during period.
Yep.
Or 2018. Okay. Yeah. So if you go back and look at where that kind of comes into place, that kind of changed kind of some of the dynamics that we saw out there. And it's like anything else, there was kind of a slow ramp up, the ExactApply and how that worked. But now you see where it's at now. I don't see very many sprayers out there that are in the last 2 or 3 years that don't have ExactApply on it, right? It's very, very, very slim.
Yep.
When you look at that, so that's one of the key points there when you're looking at ExactApply. So that's kind of like it's an option, but it's not an option, right? That's one thing, it's just there, right? But as you're looking, you've got to have it on everything you're doing. What has been let's talk a little bit about like See & Spray, for example, right? Let's talk a little bit about what we see happening there. What's some of the, how has that been playing out for you guys, and what do you see happening there?
Yeah, so we were able to be a little bit on the front line of that, as far as, and we're close to the sprayer factory in Ankeny, and we were fortunate to have some demo machines kind of when they were testing that model out, and we were able to take it to some of our more progressive customers that love technology and kind of get the feel for that, and it was very well received, and then really built a lot of excitement, honestly, into the sprayer market. And so we're seeing that start to come on, and a lot of people asking about it. I kind of liken it to ExactEmerge planters, as far as when those come out. Some guys were skeptical, didn't know, can you really plant at 10 mile an hour and actually have something that don't pop up? And now it's, kind of the norm that you have an ExactEmerge planter or some type of high-speed planter. I think that's what we'll see here from the See & Spray standpoint, moving forward.
Yeah, I remember when the whole See & Spray, the ExactEmerge technology came out. Well, that's 2015, remember, right?
Yeah.
And when that came out, it was the pricing for non-ExactEmerge versus ExactEmerge it was still pretty tight, right? There was like this big gap, you see now.
Yeah.
And now it's like you can easily you can take like I always tell my son, you got to take 2 nickels and rub them tight enough so you can get a dime, right? And now you got this whole scenario now where that gap is so big without ExactApply. I'm sorry.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. It pencils out pretty easy.
It does.
That's some really good thing. And I think you're the same way on the See & Spray side of it, and the whole subscription thing. That's a whole other debate that we can have. But at the end of the day, if you start doing the math on that, it like it or not, it pencils out.
Well, if you kind of remember too, when the ExactEmerge technology was coming out, or the high-speed technology for anybody, was kind of back in that last time frame where the markets were down, or as far as the used equipment was down. But it was something that a guy could latch onto and say, well, I do see a ROI on this. I'm not really looking to spend money, but I can see that I can add bushels, and that's real dollars, and I'm putting back in my pocket. So that was a bright spot. I kind of see that same thing with See & Spray, even as far as though that it's a added option and the added expense to it, but we're in a kind of a time frame that if you can see that ROI, guys are open to listening to that and going through that and see what it looks like on their operation.
Yep. So for the used side, as you're looking at a spray right now, I always try to do this with guys when I was talking with them. There were like a handful of options I want to make sure that everything had when it went out. Combines, there were like 3 or 4 options I want to make sure that were in the machine. Sprayers, there's always 3 or 4 options I want to have on those. Planters were just their unicorn. Everybody wanted their planter different from everybody else. It's just kind of out there by itself. But so row crop tractors, those kind of things. There's always just a handful of things out there. As you're looking at the sprayer market right now, what are some of those have options that you see out there on sprayer?
Yeah, as we move forward, a lot of things have become standard. If we look back at a 4830, it could have boom track, the shutoffs, it could have hydraulic tread adjust. Then you move to the R series, and a lot of that just became standard. So looking backwards on some of those options that we said, yeah, you got to have those, or a lot of those I'd say are standard now. But the one thing I would say that kind of catches some people off guard is cabs. There is a premium cab versus a standard cab. Our guys have caught on to that over years, where they thought maybe they'd find something that's cheaper somewhere else, and then they realize that it's not a premium cab or some other options. But I would say the biggest one that we just talked about is Exact Apply. They're doing more with boundaries and things like that from a planning standpoint. So a lot of our farms are fully mapped, and then they can see what Exact Apply does that for boundaries and waterways. That one's just becoming more and more of one that about has to have it on the machine.
Yeah, Exact Apply, like we talked about earlier, it's a no-brainer. It has to get it. Yeah. Especially with it all comes back to, you're talking about dressing, you're talking about all the different stuff, dropping sides and those kind of things, and accuracy and those kind of things, all that.
Yeah, and some of that is the customers have driven that towards the AFPs or even some of your smaller sprayer operations. We have several of those around where the guys own, 2 or 3 sprayers and that do custom spraying, and they're like, man, I got to have Exact Apply. That's what my customers are asking for because that's what the larger co-ops have. I need to get rid of my 4038 that doesn't have it and move up to a 412R or whatever the case is, but it has to have Exact Apply because that's what the customer's asking for.
Yep. Right on. Okay. Well, I guess one last thought on this topic, then we're going to jump to another one here after this break. When you're looking at the overall market right now, what are your feelings on where that market's heading? Because obviously if you go back and look at order writing periods, there wasn't that much ordered in 24 for 25 delivery, right? So there should be some leveling out there, and I'm pretty bullish about that. Feel good about that. Yep. I guess if you're looking at, are you seeing that kind of some of that supply out there starting to kind of level out a little bit and demand?
Yeah, maybe he's leveling out some. I don't know if we've turned the corner yet on it. As I've watched some other categories that have turned the corner, and then the pricing that's come back on that, I think sprayers are kind of one of the last ones to lag. And like we've talked about before on other subjects is, auction prices are kind of a leading indicator of what's going on from a marketplace heading up to. And we haven't seen that rebound yet on the sprayers from a value standpoint. And the spread is very high right now, probably one of the highest spreads of any category between auction and advertised price. And until that starts to come a little closer together, I think that'll be our indicator that, hey, I think we maybe turn the corner here on values from a sprayer standpoint.
Right on. Okay. All right. That's a good place to stop on this conversation, Matt. We're going to take a break real quick and come back. We're going to talk about some upgrade kits and what we might see happening there. All right, we're back from that break, and I got Matt Ratch and Aaron Sennell joined us here to talk about what's going on in upgrades. So, I mean, guys, I think to me, when I look at upgrade kits, if you've listened to this podcast, you're sick of me talking about upgrade kits because I think that's the future of ag. But, I look at a couple things, and especially on sprayers. I think there's two pieces of equipment out there that really have the upgrade kit situation dialed in from all manufacturers' standpoint, especially on the deer side. But when you're looking at sprayers, right? Sprayers have that whole setup, and obviously planters do, right? You can take an old 2004 planter and make it new again, right? So, the thing that about sprayers that really intrigues me the most about it is if I have a 2018 sprayer, and say I have a 2018, would that be an R4038, right?
Yep.
So I had an R4038 and I put Exact Apply on it. And even if it didn't have Exact Apply, I can get the upgrade for the Exact Apply and then go from there. But let's assume that I had Exact Apply from the factory. That opens a lot of doors when it comes to See & Spray technology. But also on top of that, beyond that part of it, right? Beyond that part of it, I can take all of the solution system, the wet system that's out there, and I can upgrade all that stuff to fit where I need to have it be, air boom purge controls and all the stuff that's been there and those kind of things that are happening. Now, the thing about the upgrade kit that is still out, and this is where I want you guys' opinion on this. The thing that's still out in the air right now is what do you have when you do that? And that's the thing that nobody has a good answer to. And not even the consumer, because you can throw it in front of the end user buyer and say, hey, here's your brand new one. Here's your one that's never been done anything to. And then there's this thing in the middle that we call an upgrade. And to me, as I'm looking at what's there, I love the idea of the upgrade kit. And the reason I love that upgrade kit, I had that 2018 machine and I can put a new engine in it, a new hydroset in it, and I can put 4 new wheel motors, right? That's a huge chunk of money, right? But I can also do the upgrade kits on the other side and have another huge chunk of money in this thing. But I don't have $800,000 in that sprayer in it. Like I would have in a new one, or 600,000 in a new one, or something like that. You know, I can take what I have. And I can kind of. It's like when I take my truck in to get service, right? They got a laundry list of stuff they want to do to my truck when it comes in there, and none of the stuff needs to be done right away, but I can piecemeal it in there as I need to. And I think that's the cool thing about the upgrade kit. What we're looking at is that if I want to take my sprayer and I want to put the See & Spray, with a premium See & Spray premium, the ultimate,
Yeah.
ultimate's, premium is the one in the middle, right? And select the brown and green, right? And I can put that on there, right? Okay, then I can put the air boom bird on there. I can start kind of piecemealing this thing back together without having to really look down the road of being like, I want the latest technology, but I don't have the pocketbook to go out and do these things on the road. So I got 2 experts on here that can talk about this. That's why they're on here, right? I guess I would start with you first. As you're looking at that as a used equipment specialist, what are your thoughts there, and how do you see that stacking in the workflow?
Well, real quick, I would argue with you that if that guy's doing wheel motors, hydro, engine, everything on that R4038 that he also did the tech upgrade on, he did just buy a R412R or a 410R, because there is a machine life calendar, if you will, on where the upgrade would or would not make sense.
Right.
Now, where to your point of you have used, you have this, and you have new, of the 2 categories in the John Deere world where things are upgradable, sprayers have a better audience, a better not audience. They're received better than the planter. That's how I would say it. On a planter, you have virtually an entire new machine, and on a sprayer, you're doing to use a bad term, but the fancy stuff, your precision, the next page for your farm.
You get everything but the chassis, basically.
Right. And there's so much left that you haven't touched, yet the sprayer is more sought after and more well received as an upgraded item versus that planter. And that planter could be everything's new but the bar, new model number, new everything. And but for some reason, you get 1,000 questions about that toolbar. Nobody asks about wheel motors, other than your standard use sprayer purchase.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where I see it happen the most, that upgrade in the sprayer world. And that's the target for the industry. But in that sprayer world, that's the perfect stair step for the guy. And what I am seeing out there is this guy doesn't upgrade, he buys the upgraded.
Right.
Instead of up here. It gives them, instead of having to jump to 535, you don't have to jump into the $500,000 pool to get the goodies. You can get this one here that's got hours, but behind you, it's virtually new.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm seeing out there anyway.
So Matt, talk about adoption here a little bit, what you're seeing as far as sprayer upgrades go, and then obviously what's your kind of your background and perspective on what you see happening with upgrades now.
Yeah, I think to Aaron's point, the sprayers are a whole different animal than the planters. I think the planters had a pretty big intimidation factor as far as what you're doing to my planter, and now you're saying I can go 10 miles an hour and do all these other things with it, and all these other things to monitor as far as hydraulic down pressure and things like that. And that was, I think, intimidating to some. Sprayers typically, not always, but you're going to have somebody that's more probably of a commercial applicator that's running them all the time. So that I don't think you have that intimidation factor near as much. I think we'll be a little quicker to adapt there. We learned a lot from the planter standpoint as far as, exact merge kits and upgrade kits is putting those on. We were intimidated as dealers as well. The first one you put on is supposed to take 80 hours or whatever it was, and it took 8 months. You know, so you're like, God, we don't want to do that again on that deal. Yeah, like that was not very cost prohibitive from a upgrade kit standpoint. But as we learned and found little tips and tricks, obviously we became more comfortable as a dealer doing it, and then took off from there. I think the sprayers would be maybe a little quicker to adapt that way, just from because of the people that are running it. You may have already that standpoint of familiarity with the machine and running it all the time, and not be as scared or intimidated by that extra technology.
That's a good point there, Matt. You know, you think about it, from the shop salesman, even customers' ears, we've been down the road before, and that's what's giving sprayers a leg up, I think. You know, out of the gates for darn sure. That's an excellent point.
So, Matt,
and a lot of those guys, you know, you know, a lot of those guys, a lot of dealerships will have dedicated sprayer techs, you know, until then, if you're putting an upgrade kit on it, they do it once or twice. They probably got it kind of handled, where the planner ones, we didn't really do a good job from a dealer standpoint, probably as far as, you know, just designating some techs that, hey, you're going to be the upgrade specialist. We just had I shouldn't say anybody and everybody, but, you know, it wasn't maybe as more streamlined. They say, well, this is a sprayer upgrade kit, so that's going to go through our sprayer specialists as far as from a tech standpoint. They probably caught on to that a little quicker, just from an standpoint. So,
and that sprayer, to your point too, that sprayer guy's not worried about a combine or a hay rake. He's the sprayer guy.
He's the sprayer guy, right?
The very process of it is more streamlined and instantly effective versus I don't know what to do with my hands, you know?
Yeah. And if I'm taking that ExactEmerge planter out, I'm planting by the highway. They say I can go 10 mile an hour. God, I hope to God something comes up. The sprayer, you know, it's already up, and I've got the right chemical in there. If it doesn't kill the weed, I can always come back and spray. There's a lot less risk probably, or nervousness about going out in the field with that than there is with the planter, not knowing if it's going to come up or not with that new technology. So,
right.
Yep, for sure. So I guess, Matt, your proximity to the factory, I mean, Deere has that, what they call it, their upgrade kit. Like they do it for you, I think. Can't remember what it's called. Well, they go ahead and put that stuff together.
Yep.
Have you taken advantage of that at all? Have you looked at that? Is that we're doing?
Yes. Yep. We've taken advantage of that, just ordering it, you know, straight from the factory. We'd had 2 of the machines out last year that were just the kind of the prototypes, and letting some progressive producers run those a couple times or throughout the year. They were blown away with the technology. I mean, I think one of the stats, we had a guy on a 200-acre field. He ended up spraying 8 acres out of that 200-acre field. Wow. So he was, he was a check writer. He was he's like, how do I get this? You know, and even some of our guys, they use the dye to show us a weed that's been sprayed out in the field, and you'd go walk through there, and you'd see a dot on the ground. I was like, I missed something there. There isn't even anything there. And then you'd kick a little dirt around. I was like, damn, it did see there's a little weed coming up through there that it saw somehow at 12 mile an hour. So there was quick, I don't want to say adaptation, but belief in the system. Once they got out in the field, could see what this thing was really doing. So, and they talk, that spreads pretty quickly to neighbors and so forth on when you're able to see that in your own fields.
Well, I can tell you, I was pretty handy with the water balloon in the bed of a pickup in high school.
It's similar.
Yeah, pretty good. But the thing about those upgrade kits, like you're talking about there, is like it opens that door to the overall spectrum. And like I said, you know, I mean, a little bit facetious there when I said if you take all that stuff and do it all at the same time, you know what it looks like. But you can piecemeal that together, and you can string together what you've got. And I think that's the really cool thing about where upgrade kits are going and what that looks like. Because, in my opinion, it opens you're letting technology into all aspects of farming, and not just because you can afford the latest and greatest. So that's good.
Yeah, and I think that's probably the biggest part moving forward is before we had to trade to upgrade. it might not have been that big of a deal because that latest technology, it took 5 years to come to the
Right.
dealership, where now it's every 6 months or whatever the case is. It's changing so quick. It's like, well, I can't trade. I just bought this thing, and now you're coming out with this. I think that's where the upgrade kits are really going to shine as far as, well, I just bought this one. I usually only trade every 5 years, but I don't want to have to trade just because I want to get some new technology. And that's where I think a lot of these upgrade kits are going to come into play, that I'll just bolt it on to the machine I have that's perfectly fine, and not have to trade into something new just to get the new technology.
Right. And to your point too, Casey, about piecemealing it, that's, I think sprayers lend to that a little better than the planters too. You could take a base machine and Exactiply, get used to that for a year or two, then start adding, and it's a more streamlined process than, well, I want just that brush belt. Well, you don't get just that brush belt.
On one row. I just want to try it on one row.
It takes this whole palette of stuff.
Right. Exactly. That's exactly right. Exactly right. So, well, guys, any final thoughts on that stuff before we wrap it up? No, I think we kind of looked at all aspects of it, from the intimidation factor, from almost a decade ago when this all started, to now it's a sought after product in the next product category. So
Yep, would agree with you.
Okay. Well, Matt, I got to ask this question because you've been to, I don't know how many moving iron summits you've been to. You've been to all of them.
All of them, yep.
Yeah. So I guess as you're looking at that, if you were to, what's a couple of reasons why you'd think somebody would want to come to the Moving Iron Summit?
I mean, the networking is huge. I mean, I've met so many people there, and even when you're going through, maybe you feel like, as a used equipment manager, sometimes you can feel like you're on an island. You're going, man, I don't know what the hell that's worth right now. When you're coming to the Moving Iron Summit, you're able to meet a lot of people, whether they're green, red, blue, doesn't matter. You can call out and visit with people and see what they're seeing. And it just, a lot of times, gives you validation of maybe the numbers you're putting on stuff. Just be able to bounce it off of like-minded people. Not only the content, I mean, I always learn something from the content that's there, but it sure is nice to meet people that you talk to on the phone a lot, and that you can visit with down the road, depending on what type of cycle we're going through at that time, and see what other people are doing. And like I said, just validating what you're doing, or maybe this is a tweak you can make that makes a big difference in your own business.
Yep, for sure. I'm pretty sure that if I wouldn't have got everybody together the first time to do that, working with Aaron, trying to get that all put together, I'm pretty sure, even though you're on the other side of the state from me, I don't know what I ever met you. So that's a cool thing about networking stuff, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
people that I've met that are within 100 miles where I live.
Yeah.
They exist. So we pop up. So it's a great way to network and stuff like that. So, well, Matt, I appreciate you being on, Aaron. Always love having you on, man. Matt, folks will reach out to you. What's the best way to do that?
Yeah. Email matt.rash@agrivisionequipment.com. Kind of a long one there, but it's all spelled out. Or cell phone, 515-210-5673.
Right on. Aaron, folks want to reach out to you. How can they do that?
Give me a shout on Twitter or X, or call me, text me, 308-760-1193.
Right on. Casey Seymour, you can find me on all of them at Moving Iron LLC. You can check me out there. Also, shoot me a phone number. It's 308-225-3305. You can text me, call me, whatever you want to do. Not happily walk you through whatever you're looking for. So with that, I am Casey Seymour with Matt Rash, Aaron Fennell, Rich Posson, and good old-fashioned Machinery Pete. So with that, it's Blue Smart, folks. Out.
Thanks for joining us. We'll see you again next week. And remember, Moving Iron is available on Farm Journal's YouTube channel and anywhere podcasts are found. So until next time, let's move some iron.